Welcome to DIY Guitar Making at Eric Schaefer Guitars. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the CITES II updates as they apply to guitars. These updates are not in effect yet, but hopefully they will be after May of 2019. If you haven't already seen the previous episode called A CITES Guide for Luthiers and Traveling Musicians, you should probably check that out first to get you up to speed on the current situation with CITES. Okay, so assuming you are already up to speed on what CITES is, let's jump right into the updates. In October of 2018, some new proposals were made at the 70th CITES convention. One permit exemption that was proposed is an exemption for instruments crossing borders for the purpose of repair. This is a great thing, so an owner can have access to a quality repair person of their choice and have their instrument sent across a border, then have it repaired and then sent back across that same border. And nobody has to deal with the hassle and expense of getting permits. That is, if this exemption goes through, and I think it will go through because there's a very good case to be made that this is a non-commercial purpose, since the ownership of the instrument never changes hands. Another permit exemption that was proposed is for traveling musicians and/or traveling orchestras. It appears that this would apply to anyone either shipping or traveling with an instrument for the purposes of performance. It's hard to say whether this will apply to individual musicians or just to orchestras, and it's hard to say what qualifies as performance. Ideally, this would mean you could move musical instruments across international borders without permits for any reason, so long as you are not selling them. But again, it's hard to say what this is going to actually look like. Further complicating things for both of these potential exemptions is the fact that individual countries may or may not adopt these changes. And even if they do, they can be interpreted differently. So what it always boils down to is this. Regardless of what happens, you should always check with the country of import and the country of export to make sure that they recognize the exemption. Never assume anything. So the repair exemption and the traveling musician exemption are a step in the right direction, and personally I think that's what we'll see happen later this year. But what manufacturers are really pushing for is a complete musical instrument exemption, which would mean no permits at all for instruments with Appendix 2 rosewood. Because here's the thing, musical instruments make up a trivial percentage of the rosewood consumed. The main culprit by a wide margin is the Chinese furniture industry. In fact, there's a specific style of furniture in China called Hongmu furniture, which translates literally into rosewood furniture. Meanwhile, the changes in CITES have massively disrupted the guitar industry, costing tens of millions of dollars, and I've even heard horror stories of guitars being unnecessarily impounded or even destroyed. So there's a massive call for musical instruments to be exempt entirely. We'll see what happens. The member countries will vote at the end of May of 2019, and 90 days later, whatever they decide will be put into effect. Now here's the thing, I don't even have a dog in this fight. Personally, these changes don't affect me one way or the other. I don't use any rosewood. I haven't used rosewood for a very long time. I can count on one hand how many guitars I've made that even have just a little bit of rosewood on them. There are no magic properties that exist in rosewood that don't also exist in about a dozen or so other woods. As human beings, there is a tendency for us to put everything into a hierarchy. We want there to be an unequivocal number one thing in every category. And once there's enough consensus on a particular thing as number one, we tend to put that thing, say rosewood, on a pedestal, and then it's very hard to ever see past it. However, reality is far more nuanced than we often like it to be. To truly understand the value of an instrument, not just in a monetary, but in a literal, tangible sense, you have to have a deeper understanding of the interrelatedness of the parts of the system that we call an acoustic guitar. That's just my 2 cents. And since I talked about legal stuff again in this episode. Here comes the disclaimer. Keep in mind that the information on this video is based on my own research from Fish and Wildlife's website and from CITES.org, among a couple other sources. I am not an expert on international law, and I don't pretend to be. Any and all statements in this video are statements of opinion, not fact. This is not an official source on CITES. For official documentation, I would check out fws.gov or CITES.org. When dealing with international law, you should conduct your own research. This video is merely my opinion of what I believe to be true. Any resemblance that this has to the actual truth or fact is mere coincidence. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video every Friday. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.